4 great fantasy books that are so great that they serve as major inspirations for my own novel. If you're here to listen to me ramble on for about an hour about these books and how much I like them, stay tuned. But without further ado, let's get started. If you're new here, hi. My name is Fajar, aka FBD Writes. I'm writing my own novel, an action-adventure romantasy set in a matriarchal world based heavily on ancient Sparta. Link is in the description if you guys want to check out a sample. And when I talk about books in this channel, I'm not just going to be talking about what I like or dislike about a certain book, but I'll also be analyzing its narrative elements. You know, how a plot is structured, how characters are built in order to piece together what makes a book work. I read just about anything. I'm an action-adventure sci-fi guy at heart. I've been varying my tastes in order to improve my writing. More of the trendy books that people are reading nowadays. You know, books that can be found on Book Talk or on BookTube. Before we start, a quick word about spoilers. I will be front-loading my reviews with non-spoiler information before giving it a rating. But afterwards, it'll be the spoiler section, and I'll warn you guys before that happens. So this video is sponsored by me. I am the creator of Book Yappy, a reading tracker app. The vision is to create the best book annotation app out there so you can remember your books better and share your reading experiences with your friends. Use it to track your reading progress, take notes, create analytics. Core features are free. There's a free trial attached to the premium version as well. Go get Book Yappy, link is in the description, and back to the video. We are coming in hot with The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang. You're an orphan in some rural village in some fictional version of 20th century China. To make things worse, you're brown, a fate worse than death. And to make things even worse, you're a woman, a fate worse than being brown. One day, your adopted parents tell you that they're going to wed you off to some guy that you've never met. So what do? You study as hard as possible to pass this civil servant exam. You do so well that you get placed in this elite academy filled with spoiled rich kids. And during your time there, you make new friends, you make new enemies. You're trained to become a war leader, a martial artist, an enlightened shaman, and you fight a war. That is what this book is about. This book delves into topics like the atrocities of war, imperialism, colonialism, feminism, all the fucking isms. Heavy themes about seeking power for revenge and for ambition. It is heavily inspired by the historical events surrounding China and Japan in the early 20th century, and it doesn't hold back. This book was able to transport me to a period in time that I've only heard about in school, about the atrocities that the Japanese committed in China at that time. And it made me feel it. It made me feel helpless when those events are relayed in the book. But it's not all so bad. I love the time that our main character spends in the fictional academy that they've set up. I love the world. The world is filled with wonder and filled with intrigue. And for me, the book has bonus points for talking about Eastern cultures, values, and myths. I read a lot of Western books, and it gets exhausting sometimes. This individual fighting against an unjust society. This book, in my opinion, is about working together, working for your people, and touches upon things like finding your inner spirituality in an Eastern sense, not in an eat, pray, love sense. We also see lots of action. Our main character's growth and story arc was interesting to see. And as much as I love this book, certain things prevent me from giving it a 5 out of 5. A lot of characters felt kind of flat, and it took me a while to differentiate between different people. I had trouble with the pacing. Sometimes it feels like things were happening too fast. Sometimes it feels like things were happening too slow. Because of that, this book is a 4.5 stars for me. Definitely excited to read the rest of the trilogy, and I'll probably vlog my experience while doing so and dissect the entire trilogy once I'm done. But yeah, if any of that sounds interesting to you, get The Poppy War by R.F. Kuang, because now we're entering the spoiler territory. So I'll sort of walk you through the first 3 chapters to understand how this book hooks readers in. The story starts with an exam, okay? And in my opinion, exams are a great way to world build, to character build. When in other popular media, you can think of maybe like the Chunin exams from Naruto or fucking the Hunter x Hunter exams, right? Exams give the authors a great way to flex different characters, to flex the power system, to flex the world, to tell you how the character overcomes the obstacles that's present in their way, which is why my novel actually starts with an exam of its own. In this book, we start with Rin getting ready to start the exam. And it creates intrigue from the very beginning. The opening line is about how she should strip naked because this exam is very important and there are lots of crazy anti-cheating measures and people around her are getting nervous. It creates intrigue for the reader to want to know, okay, what is this exam? Who is this person taking this exam? And then it actually cuts back, gives us through flashbacks everything about Rin here. Rin is our main character, that she's an orphan girl, that her parents were forced to adopt her, that she's brown, that she has this little brother that she loves in a way. And we also learn her motivations for taking this test. We learn that Rin was set to get married off to this guy, but she finds that so atrocious that she sees this as a way to escape that. If she does well enough, she can test into this school called Synagogue. If she gets into the school, she can get in for free. This school only accepts the best of the best. To achieve her goals, she studies really hard. She pours candles on her skin so she can stay awake. Whenever characters are shown to study really hard to the point of like pain and fatigue, that makes whatever they achieve later on feel earned. We also get told that this exam covers these 4 distinct subjects. And I feel like this is such a clever way to world build. One of these subjects is complete and utter bullshit. But once you read the book in its totality, you sort of understand its purpose. This one subject covers things like proverbs, weird mythical values. And it's something that you can only get by just rote memorization. And this is what Rin has to do. The author here wastes no time. We see her actually pass and get into Synagogue at the very first chapter. The second chapter, the author uses to build more of the world. On her way to Synagogue, we world build some more. We're introduced to Nikaran politics. Nikara is the China stand-in in the story. Mugen, the Mugen Federation, is the Japanese stand-in in the story. Hesperia is the Western stand-in in the story. We get to see how they all interplay about the state that Nakara is in. Nakara is being dominated by warlords at this point. There's an empress, but her authority amongst them is weak. The roads might be filled with bandits, which is something that Rin is scared about. But eventually they do make it to Synagogue. And Synagogue, the capital city of Nakara, is shown to be like this bustling metropolis, but it's like an eastern metropolis. So we're told about the rickshaws, about how dense things are, about the architecture. There's this scene where this rickshaw driver hits a kid and he's forced to unalive the kid, because if he doesn't do that, he might be forced to pay for this kid's medical fees. And then we get into Synagogue Academy proper. We see as Rin experiences going into this beautiful temple-like structure on the side of a mountain. One of her very first experiences here is she actually meets this boy named Neza. He is a spoiled, elitist, rich kid, and things happen between them. It is a good enemies to lovers setup, a classic hate meet where these two, well, if you guys read, you know what happens. But it's also efficient. It's not just showing us these two characters interacting. It's also showing us how girls like Rin get treated by boys like Neza. It shows us this classism that's at play here in the society. And in the third chapter, she starts at Synagogue. And she has these 2 roommates, because there are only 3 girls in this cohort of everyone who makes it in here. We are introduced to these 5 masters, each with their own subjects. One of the masters stand out. This guy named Master Jiang. He's very kooky. He's a little bit weird. The author's way of telling us we should probably pay attention to this guy. We also get the stakes raised. We are told that by the end of the first year, if a master doesn't take you to become one of their apprentices, you will be kicked out of Synagogue. And then Rin starts and crazy shit happens. The author does not waste time. 2 chapters in, and we know everything there is to know about Rin. We know everything there is to know about her motivations. We know just the basics of what the world is like and what the political situation is like. We see her get introduced to Neza, a potential love interest, and what we can expect Rin to have to go through. This is way harder than it seems. To write an introduction that is succinct, but it's jam-packed with all the information that the reader needs to know. It took me 5 chapters just to get to the academy that I wanted my characters to get into. And it took lots of rewrites in order for me to even get to that point. These 3 chapters set up enough intrigue for the readers to want to keep going. We want to see how Rin survives. Will Rin make any friends? What will happen between Rin and Neza? What was up with that guy, Master Jiang? Why did the author spend so much time introducing us to the Poppy Wars, introducing us to Mugen and Nikara and Hesperia? Will all of that come into play? Before I continue, I'll now get into heavy spoiler territory. Now, what's funny is in my original script, I sort of rambled for about 40 minutes just talking about everything that happens in this book. So right now, I'm trying my best to be short and succinct. Okay, I have a lot to say about this book. This book is fucking great. First, Neza and Rin, enemies to lovers. I love it. Spoilers, nothing really happens between these two. But the way it's set up leaves me wanting to see something happen. In the beginning, there's a lot of fighting between these two, and they're characterized so well that it makes sense. It's not one of those where like these 2 people hate each other, but they have an immense amount of lust for each other, so it doesn't really matter. No, this is actually, Rin has a lot of reasons for hating Neza. Neza has a lot of reasons for hating Rin. But because they're forced to work together when shit starts going bad, there's this moment where they fight back to back. There are moments in this book where they reunite again and they actually start having a friendship. And then when Neza gets ripped away from Rin, Rin has a breakdown because of it. And also because his fate is left ambiguous, I'm 100% sure we're going to see Neza again in the second and third books, and it just gives me a reason to wanting to see what happens as the story continues. The other thing I'd like to say is that shamanism, the power system in this book, shamanism, is very dope. Shamanism involves communing with the gods. There are these gods, which I'm pretty sure are inspired by Chinese mythology, that you can communicate with, and they would grant you powers. Now, this is a bit of a misdirection, because when we start reading, we automatically assume that the power system is going to be about kung fu. It's going to be about ki. It's going to be about all these bloodline ancient techniques. But no, the real power system here is something that can only be attained by meditating, by sifting through all the bullshit proverbs, by finding enlightenment within yourself, by clearing your mind. This is R. Kwang's way for saying, listen, the real strength is by looking inwards, not by this mechanical, reproducible kung fu, which has been mass marketed to Western audiences. The real strength comes within the mythology. The real strength comes within the traditions and the culture, not all this combat stuff. There is a drawback to communing with the gods. If you give the gods too much of your time, too much power, if you call on them for too long, you will start to go crazy. It's very nicely interwoven with one of the many morals in the story. This idea that wanting revenge and wanting power, of having too much ambition, can lead to your ruin. We see characters in the story who they are very powerful, but they are so powerful they lose their minds. And because they lose their minds, they are sent to be immured in this underground mountain prison where their powers are gone, but they will still live for eternity as their mind has completely rotted away and as gods continue to keep them insane. When we first get introduced to shamanism, it felt like it was something out of left field. When Rin was studying shamanism, she had to get out of the school. She had to go into this mountain to meditate. We learn about these temples we've never heard of before. We learn about this history we've never thought of before. Taken away from the comforts of Sinigard, especially in Act 2, when Rin gets thrown into the real world and she has to learn more about her powers. The story completely twists and turns around. In Act 2, Mugen starts to attack. Now, I personally wanted to see more Sinigard. I thought the Sinigard plotline was great, but I get it, right? The author was building up towards something. I feel like more Sinigard would probably be a more boring story. But when the shift happens, as we switch from a story about Rin in this academy to a story about Rin fighting a war, a lot of things get thrown out the window. A lot of characters get thrown out the window. And yeah, 100% this made sense for a story about war and all the shock and all the separation that it brings. We get into Act 2, we get introduced to the Chike. The Chike are these sorts of assassins who use the mythical powers granted to them by their gods to do what the Empress of Nakara wants them to do. But because they're now at war, the Chike are sent to the front lines. Because we don't spend any time whatsoever in Act 1 getting to know these characters, I felt like I couldn't really get attached to any of them, except for this one guy, except for this guy named Altan, but I'll probably talk about it later. And it left me wanting more for the characters that we've already built up in Act 1. But that said, in Act 3, when more crazy shit happens, when we get to this one moment, we see some of the characters that we've met in Act 1. When we see them again, it creates for a more powerful moment. Now, what am I talking about? In Act 3, we relive the actual of Nanking, these atrocities that the Japanese committed on the Chinese. It's when the Japanese came in and massacred hundreds of thousands of people, killings of infants. We get to see that. For me, when we got to that moment, I was actually transported to that moment in time. From Rin's perspective, we see how hopeless she feels. R.F. Kuang details all of these atrocities that happen. We get reintroduced back to Kitei. Kitei is Rin's sort of best friend and ally back in Sinigard, tells us what happened. We get reintroduced to Venka. Venka was Rin's female rival in Sinigard, but now she's like completely reduced to a victim, and we just feel so fucking bad for her. And this sort of makes sense why Rin and Altan, they do what they do later, which is to say fuck it, fuck all this caution we're throwing to the wind by not messing with the gods. We're actually going to release all of these people in this underground mountain who are now insane due to being taken over by the gods. We're going to release them. We're going to wreak havoc on this country because at this point, the Muganese, they're just going to keep killing everyone. And I'm not even joking. After what I see in Act 3, as dorky and as nerdy as this sounds, it made it harder for me to just consume anything Japanese, right? It made it harder for me to just fucking watch anime after that. The book being able to make me feel that speaks a lot to R.F. Kuang's writing and how she structured everything to build up for that moment. There's a lot that I'm not even talking about. There's a lot about Jiang that I'm not talking about. There's a lot about what the Chike did. There's a lot about more Rin and Neza stuff. But I'll end this review off by talking about the Spearleys and by talking about Altan. One thing about Rin that I haven't really talked about is she is a member of the Spearleys. The Spearleys are, at this point in time, a dead race that got wiped out in the Second Poppy War by the Mugenese. It's just really sad because there are moments in this book we find out that Rin feels a lost connection with it because she never was brought up in this culture. Altan is Rin's commander in the Chike. He is a Spearley as well. We actually get to see some of Altan in Act 1. And Rin and him, they give me like brother and sister vibes, right? They are the last members of this dead race, the Spearleys. There was this throwaway moment somewhere in Act 2 when people were joking because they find out that Rin is also a Spearley. Rin, are you and Altan just going to like reproduce and make all these babies? Rin blushes, but at the same time, there's like this very sad moment because Rin has unalived her womb in order to never get periods again. And there's just that realization, especially when you understand more and more about the Spearleys. Not only is what Rin did very emblematic of this whole idea of wanting revenge, of wanting power so much that it kills you, that you burn off your future. Not only is that emblematic of that, but it's very sad to think about it. Just the fact that she burned off this bridge and she feels some sort of guilt, lost connection to these people she's never met, but that's where she's from. I think that was like very powerful. The whole thing with the Spearleys worship this one god called the Phoenix. This is the god that gives Rin her powers, her ability to control flames. The Phoenix is the god of revenge, the god of vengeance, the god of wrath. It's so cool in a very crazy way, in a very grim way. So the Spearleys, I could talk lots more and more about the Spearleys, but the Spearleys historically have been used by the Nikaran Empire to serve as soldiers for them. Even though they're like seen as backwards and savages, they were used as soldiers because they can commune with their god. Despite the fact that they're very powerful, their god is very powerful, it ends up with them being wiped out. And because they worship hatred and vengeance all this time, there's this moment towards the end where Rin and Altan visit like the spiritual limbo. And they find that the Spearleys are still alive in the spiritual sort of realm. But all they can do is think about hatred. All they can do is wait for this one avatar of vengeance. Wait for someone like Rin to come along to take up the mantle of being their avenger. Even though they're dead, even though we get to visit Spear, the island where they once lived, and it's now reduced to a pile of bones, their spirits are still filled with rage and calling for the extermination of the entire world for what they did to them. That it's crazy. And then to end it off with Rin very tragically falling into those feelings of wrath and revenge and calling forth the entire destruction of the Mugenese people, of Mugen. That's fucking crazy. Not to mention Altan's own story and how tragic that is. You know, what I'll say as I end off this review is I think I'm actually going to retcon my rating. I'm going to give this book a 5 out of 5. Because talking about this and making this video, I realized that I fucking love this book. Okay, this book actually is such an entertaining book. That's the Poppy War, right? That's the fucking Poppy War. Our next book is Blood Over Brighthaven by M.L. Wang. You are a mage in a world where magic is done through computer programming. You spent your whole life researching, perfecting your craft, learning spells, learning how to code, just so you can become a venerated high mage, a position that many mages can only dream of attaining. The thing is, you're a woman in a man's world. You face a lot more obstacles than your peers, but despite it all, you achieve your dreams and you become the first ever female high mage. The problem is, people still don't respect you, and you quickly find out that the high magistrate has a lot of skeletons in its closet. But with your trusty token minority janitor of a sidekick, nothing can stop you from uncovering the truth, from unearthing a conspiracy, and for leaving your mark in history. That is what Blood Over Brighthaven is about. Now, it might sound like a great premise, but execution-wise, it leaves a lot to be desired. First thing I'll say is that this book is preachy. Okay, it's heavy on its social commentary on the patriarchy, on imperialism. And when I say imperialism, think of like 20th century, 19th century America, where, you know, the country is sort of displacing the natives. And there are quite a few moments in this book where the main character just sits down to talk and argue with a literal representation of patriarchy. They have like this argument that's not even subtle. The main character goes and says, "You think what? So just because I'm a woman, you think it's okay to treat me like shit?" And then the other person says, "Well, yeah, because our religion and our culture says so. So it's all well and good." And it's just, I don't want to say lazy, but I feel like it could have been done way better. A lot of navel gazing here, where the third person narrator just says things to explain to us why the things that our main character is doing is very unwomanlike, or the things that what our main character is doing she can't really do because she's a poor helpless woman in the society, right? So there's a lot of that, and I'll be honest, I feel like I got bamboozled into reading this book. I expected more cool computer science magic shit, but instead I got literal feminist literature. This feels like something I would read in a humanities class back in college when we're discussing fucking Steinem or Wollstonecraft. And this is not why I read fantasy. As I alluded to before, in terms of the magic system, the computer science stuff, as someone with a computer science background, I felt like it didn't go too in depth. It wasn't as cool as it could have been. It felt like the computer science programming stuff was just flavor. There's nothing that suggests to me that our main character is adept at computer science. She does a lot of research and that she writes code. Nothing about system design, nothing as basic as like mentioning algorithms or data structures. The power system could have been about mages in this world writing down spells on a piece of paper. That takes a lot of research to get right. And I feel like it wouldn't change much. In my novel, actually, I'm writing a power system that's very heavily inspired by computer networking and its flaws, but also what it enables people to do. People can use telepathy, but telepathy is just sending signals to other people's minds, but you can interpret and use those signals in order to do really cool things. Shameless plug aside, I get that maybe what ML Wang was trying to say is that in this world, people have stripped something as whimsical as magic down to code. I get that maybe what she's trying to say is, maybe the tech industry of today is problematic. I get all of that. The message aside, it ruined the enjoyment of this book for me because I felt like she could have done so much better things with it. Okay, all of that whining aside, I enjoyed this book. Okay, I like how everything was structured. I like that the plot had intrigue. I found myself slogging through some of the boring parts of this book, some of the preachy parts of this book, because I wanted to get to the end. And when I got to the end, I got payoff. And I thought some of the ideas that it had was interesting, but maybe it's because I don't really read books like this a lot. Some characters I felt like were very interesting. It's just very interesting to think about. Being vague here, but I really like how this story has the balls to entertain certain ideas. I like books that talk about ideas that are sort of like wild and like, okay, this book is going there. I like that. I liked the main character. Lots of people have problems with the main character. I actually like her. So much so that she inspires a certain character in my novels. The secondary character was okay. He was serviceable. Why I'm talking about this fantasy book today, though, is because I feel like it did something that it set out to do. It set out to get people to think. And it certainly got me to think. I think because of the way the plot is structured, it got me to the end. This is my lowest rated book for today. I give it a 3 out of 5 stars. I know some people who might really like this, other people who would rather tear their eyes out before reading stuff like this. Originally, when I finished the book, I gave it a 4 out of 5 just because I was riding that high of the ending sequence. But as I was making this video, I realized, okay, maybe it's not as cool as I thought it was. Okay, you're now entering the spoiler section for Blood Over Brighthaven. I want to discuss how this book hooks us in the first couple of chapters and how it got me to keep reading. First things first, there is an action hook at the beginning. The very first chapter doesn't introduce us to our main character, doesn't even introduce us to the magic system. It's actually just a heartfelt action system that gets emotional. I'm not going to spoil it for you guys because I think you guys should just read it. It got me to chapter 2. It does feel like a little bit of a misdirection though, because it feels a little bit disconnected from everything else. The tone that it's trying to convey and the problems that it's facing are kind of different. At the same time, because this book is trying to talk about exploitation, I get it. Okay, I get it. Then we go on to chapter 2, where we're introduced to our main character. We're introduced to Siona Freinen. She's on her way to the High Magistracy exam. She is taking her morning commute on this train, being escorted by her cousin, Alba. And, an exam, I'm telling you guys, exams are a great way to start the story. The author uses the train ride to tell us who Siona is, what are her thoughts about the men in her life, about the women in her life, what are her thoughts on Alba, about the city. She looks out the window of this train that she's using, and she sees the city coming to life as dawn starts to break. This city is called the city of Tehran. Tehran is this imperialistic patriarchal city that the whole story takes place in. The thing to know about Siona is that she's a very ambitious girl. She's confident to the point of arrogance. She's smart, but she's also egotistical, which makes sense because she's trying to be the first ever female high mage of the city of Tehran. And then she enters the hall where the high mages congregate, the Magi Center, and the author describes, the sort of art that they have, the statues, the inscriptions, marble, the paintings on the ceiling. And I like this, right? It's a very clever way to world build. Also a very clever way to get the author's point across, because all of these paintings and everything, they're only men, right? And Siona can't help but look in reverence for them, but also wonder if she can ever be painted and put in one of these statues. I like this so much that I made one of the main characters in my novel an artist, so he can actually comment on stuff like this in my novel's world. So Siona goes ahead and goes into the testing area. She watches as these other people do their tests. She watches this one guy who completely flubs his test, but because his father is already a high mage, he gets in later on. Then we see her take her test, and she's being given harder challenges to pull through, but because Siona is so damn smart and so damn prepared, she does it anyways. Her final test that she had to do, she had to lift like this cauldron up. We see the power system at play here during this test. We see her get on her magical typewriter. We see what she thinks. It's kind of computer sciencey. There's like if statements that she has to pull off, but she goes like, oh, if this does that, then we do this. She uses that to lift up this cauldron, which is apparently hard. Magic here works by sucking in energy from this thing they call the other realm, and they use that energy using the code to direct it to the world around them, to move objects, to raise the temperatures of things. And the city of Tehran, the entire city of Tehran, is based off of this magical technology. But Siona does well. During this final exam, she actually puts the cauldron all the way up, blasts it on the ceiling. Literal and metaphorical way of her smashing the ceiling. She becomes the first ever female high mage. And this is all well and done by the third chapter. Siona established, we see her in her first day as a high mage, and this is where, even though she's a high mage now, the high magistry is a boys club, right? So these guys sort of prank her when she first comes in. The co-workers assign her this janitor as a lab assistant as a way to demean her. But unbeknownst to them, this janitor actually ends up being pretty smart. This janitor ends up helping Siona discover breakthroughs later on. This janitor's name is Tomil. Now, Tomil is the secondary character of this book. Tomil is a Quen. Quens are underrepresented minorities in the city of Tehran. They're foreigners who come into the city of Tehran to seek refuge. More on that later. And they get exploited by the industrialists and the capitalists in the city. We learn bits and pieces about the Quen as the story goes on. A tangent, but Quen apparently, linguistically, could be traced as a root word of queen, which used to mean female. So, I don't know if ML Wang is cooking or whatever, but okay, the underrepresented minorities are called the Quen. Very interesting. Then the rest of the story follows Siona and Tomil as they work to do this one project for the High Magistrate. They want to expand the magical barrier that protects the city of Tehran against the outside world and also controls its temperature. So that's the project they're working on. But along the way, they discover secrets and they unearth a conspiracy. So after these first few chapters, right, we get a sense of the stakes. Why Siona is motivated to become a high mage and why she's motivated to sort of trailblaze, to why Siona is this way, why she's raised this way. And for the rest of the book, it's carried on by the fact that we want to see Siona succeed, but also we want to learn more about Tomil. We want to learn more about the Quen because they're kind of mysterious at this point in time. So it's a great way to start. One thing I'll add is that beside the start of these chapters, you get sort of these excerpts from their version of the Bible, which also foreshadows what they're going to talk about in the chapter. I feel like that's a very nice bit of world building. And I also love in the beginning that they actually show us what a spellograph looks like, right? So this is what a spellograph looks like. These are the magical typewriters. And really the way it works, let me just nerd out about this for a second. You have this magical spellwriter, but you also have this sort of monitor built into it. The magic system works. You type in code to pull in energy from this other realm. Well, this monitor gives you a sort of visual representation of what that other realm looks like. And it also plays a part into the mystery of the story as we keep going. There's also this cool little map. Instead of just showing a landmass, it actually shows a a little. It actually shows like a visual description of of the city of Tehran and tells you where things are located. So it helps you visualize those things. There's great world building in this book. The names feel consistent. I really like how the religion, there's one religion, but there's a sort of rift. Siona is a Leonite, but there's also the Tarasans or the Thracians, and they have different interpretations of the faith. And faith sort of plays a role in this book, not heavily, but it does play a role, especially when the mysteries start unraveling. Okay, heavy spoiler time. Heavy spoiler. First thing I'll say, I like Siona's character. I think her character is great. At moments in time, you want to sort of yell at her because she's being dumb. But at least for me, I want to yell at her because I got attached to her character. I want to see her succeed. So, for example, when she starts pushing Tamil away, when she slaps Tamil, because Tamil is telling her uncomfortable truths about the mystery they've unraveled. I'm like, okay, Siona, you're being a fucking dumbass, but you know, it's realistic, right? It's realistic. Her character is well built, and I'm intrigued enough to see where she goes. I actually like Tamil and Siona's dynamic. Okay, some people say it's problematic, colonizer, colonized sort of relationship, but I don't give a fuck. I think it's cute. I think if Tamil's perspective was shown more, and if their dynamic was explored a lot more, that would have been better. I get that maybe what ML Wang is trying to say is that relationships like those, as cute as it might seem, they can't happen because nothing does happen between these two except for, I think, a kiss. Siona was like, hey, I kind of want to stay over, but for the night before we go on this like dangerous mission. But Tommy is like, I don't think that's a good idea because of this and that. And because this is just something that can't happen in our society. Message wise, I get. Execution wise, I wish something did happen. I wish we got to see more of Tamil's POV. The Quen are interesting, and I wish they did a lot more world building about the Quen. A lot of what Tamil does is just in reaction to the unfair world around him. It's as if like he has little agency, he has little choice. But maybe that's what they're trying to say about underrepresented minorities like Tamil. That said, we only get to see his perspective and maybe his daughter slash niece. I wish we got to see more of them. The Tiranish calls everyone from outside the Quen. But low-key, there are multiple different tribes with different backgrounds, with different personalities. And also, it's implied that these guys also know magic. They have their own version of magic that doesn't really involve using typewriters. And I wish that was explored more. I like the mystery. I think the mystery is very thematic. A lot of people say it's obvious. What the groundbreaking twist is that when you're sucking energy from the other realm, you're actually sucking energy from the actual world. So outside of the city of Tehran, there's this thing called blight. Blight is this weird mystical source of energy that seems to kill anything it touches. It kills the wildlife, it kills people. And because of that, living outside of the city of Tehran can get dangerous. So then refugees flock to the city of Tehran for safety and refuge. Yeah, but it turns out that is just what happens when you pull energy using magic. So Siona finds this out, Tamil and Siona find this out. Siona has a mental breakdown. I'd like to point out that I feel like this is when the book sort of became a slog for me. Because we get this like groundbreaking reveal. It was like very tense. We get everything. They build us up for like, oh, what could it be? What could the mystery be? We find the truth, and then the author has to slow it down, right, so people don't get overwhelmed. But the way the author slows it down is by having Siona become a manic, depressive person, and her aunt calls this doctor to try and get her to feel better. But this doctor was about to chemically lobotomize her. Siona and this doctor for like an entire chapter just argues. Towards the end, Siona forces the city of Tehran to confront this uncomfortable truth that their whole society is built on the exploitation and extraction of resources from the outside. And that causes a citywide riot in the city of Tehran. And I liked it, right? It's a great piece of social commentary. I don't know how true it is because I feel like, even in our today's society, I mean, I fucking eat bananas and I know where they come from. There's like this sort of like casual attitude that people have towards what is clearly products of exploitation and oppression. Towards the end, Siona literally makes it so that whenever some magical appliance comes to life, you see where that source of energy is coming from. So like if you turn on a light switch, you see that it's killing some deer outside in the world, or it's killing some fish, or sometimes it's killing people. That's what Siona does. Her cousin comes in to berate her, tells her, we're over, we're not family, fuck you. Very sad moment, never gets resolved. That was a hard hitting moment for me, but also feels like realistic. And then towards the end, she also gets taken in by Brigham. Brigham is Siona's sort of mentor figure that has helped her all this time. We're also introduced to him very early on. And he's a very interesting character because I think what this book is trying to get us to think about is Brigham wants women's suffrage. Brigham wants to see people like Siona take part in this magic they have. But in order for Siona to do that, what Brigham wants Siona to do is to also empty out her soul, empty out her feelings in order to oppress, just like he does. Siona and women like her could rise in society if only they're okay with oppressing the Quen, if only they're okay with oppressing the people underneath them. But that's something that Siona doesn't want to do, mostly because of her character arc after having learned about Tamil and his people, and because apparently at the end of the day she has a conscience and she has a heart. And towards the end, when the city is sort of breaking down, we get to see, I really like this, we get to see the magic being used in full force. We see Brigham in it with his staff, like casting fireballs, and like they make it sound badass, but literally what he's doing is like killing like unarmed underrepresented minorities in this fucking city. We see another colleague of Brigham bring like his like car, his Batmobile, and as he runs over, as he fucking runs over helpless mobs of people, and it's shown as being badass. I like that this story has the balls to show us that. It also has the balls to suggest, because what Siona comes up with when faced with the truth that this society wants to keep the oppression going, she decides to just blow it all up. And just the balls for suggesting that is crazy. I like how circular the beginning and ending is. The beginning starts with Tamil running with his family to get into the city of Tehran, but as he does so, blight gets them and kills the people next to him. His family, his tribe, all wiped out. At the end, the very final scene is him leaving the city of Tehran with his newfound family and other people from Quen descent. They're also being killed, but more of them succeed as they flee. In the beginning, we get Siona going into the Magus Center to test herself to become a high mage. In the end, she goes to the Magus Center to be put on trial, and she drinks this poison vial shortly before her plans spring into motion and kills everyone in the fucking in the fucking place. And I think I love it when everything's circular, and it ends on a sort of sad note, at least for me, as Tamil looks back to the city and he thinks of Siona one final time. I don't know. It's interesting. That's all I have to say about Blood Over Bridehaven. Now we're moving on. Oh boy. Oh boy, oh boy, oh boy. It's time. It's time, it's time, it's time. The will of the many, it's time. You are the prince of a sunny, nice little island nation. You have a loving family, a wise father, and tutors who bring you up as an educated royal prince. Then one day, out of nowhere, this Neo-Roman Empire comes in, conquers your people, turns you into an orphan, unalives everyone you know and love. You bounce from orphanage to orphanage until eventually a senator, a high-ranking member of the empire that conquered your people, he comes in, he adopts you, he sends you into this elite academy for the children of the powerful. And your adopted father only does this so he can use you to investigate his brother's death, a case which is clear-cut on the outset. But along the way, you get blackmailed by these revolutionary freedom fighters in order to do their bidding because they know who you actually are. And if your information becomes public, you will be executed by this empire. Not to mention, you do fun things in the academy, you make friends, you make rivals. Not to mention, this academy is hiding secrets that are so intriguing and full of suspense and mystery. Friends, brothers and sisters, sons and daughters, eunuchs and concubines, you need to get this book, right? And if you already have this book, you need to reread it. The Will of the Many is my top book of the year. It is really fucking great. It's awesome. A non-stop action-paced thriller. This book is like crack to me. It's like cheddar popcorn. I just keep fucking devouring it like a fucking addict. I read this book and I read its sequel as soon as it comes out. Okay, enough glazing. Let me just talk about this book. The book is filled with non-stop action, suspense, mystery, political intrigue. The main character of this book is 100% a Gary Stu. He's wise, he's good-hearted, and he's also ridiculously competent at everything he does. Like a lot of the times when he's faced with a problem, you're like, oh, I remembered this one tutor back from when I was a royal who taught me this specific subject. It gets kind of obnoxious at times, but it's fun. He's so observant that his inner monologue, you can see the intention and his deduction, and usually they're correct. But I feel like it's fine for this type of book, right? It's like competence porn, right? It's like watching fucking Jack Reacher, Alan Richardson. He's like this huge guy. He's smart too. He just goes around and he beats up the bad guys. But instead, we get an underdog who is smart, who is crafty, who beats up a system that is meant to oppress people like him. Now, the thing is, the power system in this book isn't really explored. Okay, it's not really used. The power system in this book is called will, and because our main character goes to this elite academy, for reasons that'll be made clear later, they don't actually use will. It's forbidden to use will inside the academy. So the way will works is that everyone has this inherent life force within them, right? Kind of like Nen from Hunter x Hunter, but not really, because you can't do like crazy shit with this. If you have an excess of will, you become physically and mentally stronger. Okay, your body becomes more impervious to physical attacks. Your mind works faster, and you can imbue objects. You can touch objects, give it your will, and you can move it around like telepathically. And with will, people make things like these giant plane-like structures that move people around. They make things like weapons. They make things like art, security systems. Importantly, people can cede their will to others, right? So if you have will, I can cede my will, meaning I can give this person 50% of my will in perpetuity until I want to take it back. Now, the name given to this Neo-Roman Empire is the hierarchy, otherwise known as Catan, right? So Catan, the hierarchy, they have set up their society as this sort of one giant pyramid scheme. You have 8 layers in the societal pyramid. At the very 8th layer, they're called the octavi. They cede their will to the people above them, the septimi, the people on the 7th layer. The people on the 7th layer cede their will to the people above them, the sexti, the people at the 6th layer, and so on and so forth until you meet the princeps. Will and its applications and how exactly it works and the ritual surrounding it, that gets explored more in the second book. You won't be getting that in this book, but the way will works in this book is it's used by the author to talk about some of its ideas about the nature of imperialistic and oppressive systems. I always love it when a book does more than just try to entertain you. It gets to think about things. It did take me a while to understand the political situation and all the factions involved in this book. It's a thick book, right? And it doesn't hold your hand. It just expects you to be fully immersed and to pick it up as you go along. It helps a lot that I have a physical copy because that means I can always look back at something to reread something. Be patient and keep that in mind if you want to read this book. Reading this book and finishing it convinced me that I should write a book, actually. The writing style is very similar to how I would write. And this book shows me that it could flow well and could work and it could carry an entire book. And before rambling on some more, I give this book a 5 out of 5 stars, just straight up. Get this book if you haven't, because we're about to enter the spoiler section. Okay, here's the thing. This book doesn't start quick. Okay, it's an epic fantasy, and it expects you to be in it for the long haul. We don't even get to the academy until about 100 pages in, which is very different than the other books I've covered so far, which sort of tells the readers that this book is more so about the world. It's more so about the characters and the political intrigue and the factions than it is about this one place, which is this academy. So it starts by introducing us to Viz. Viz is our main character. We find out later that his real name is Diago, and right now he's an orphan. He works as this prison guard to sort of get money. We established that Viz is smart and that he has a lot more depth to his character that hasn't been revealed yet. He plays Foundation, which is this world's version of chess, against this guy that he works with. And while that's happening, all of a sudden, mysterious guy, he comes in. He bears like crazy credentials, and he's asking to speak to a prisoner. So immediately there's intrigue. We also see the power system will being used. It doesn't hold your hand. It doesn't tell you how exactly things are working. It's just that, oh, some of these things have will in them. And that allows people to open doors. It allows things to move on its own. And then as Viz escorts the stranger to talk with this prisoner, he picks things up, right? Because these people are talking in another language. And Viz picks up on it. Viz understands the language and he needs to act like he doesn't. And you're like, why? Why does he act like why is he trying to act like he doesn't know this language? This guy clearly shouldn't be working at a prison. You're also intrigued, like why this high-ranking person, it seems like he might be committing some sort of treason, some sort of conspiracy that he doesn't want other people to talk about. What is this person's deal? So that intrigue carries you over to the second chapter where we see Viz fighting in this underground arena. So he fights in an underground arena to get money, and then very quickly Viz is put face to face with this guy who's a sextus. Okay, so as I iterated before, right, sextuses are people on the 6th layer of the societal pyramid, and because of that, they have a lot of will within them. Now, Viz at this point in time can't use will. So to use will, you actually need to undergo this ceremony. Viz hasn't done so. One of his main fears in life is ever doing so because he never wants to cede will. He never wants to take part in this corrupt system that gives his conquerors power. Viz, this person who can't use will, is set up against someone who has an excess amount of will. Now, he's clearly meant to lose, right? But because of the person Viz is, he keeps fighting, and he fights so well, he ends up beating this guy, and he ends up, unaliving this guy. And this tells us what this book is about. It's about Viz, this underdog, fighting an enemy that is stronger than him, but because of his sheer will and determination, he's able to win. After this, Viz navel gazes a bit. He thinks about Sus. Sus is the island kingdom that Viz was once a royal of, and he gets in trouble. And he's like, oh shit, I need to fucking leave. We get to see him go back to his orphanage that he lives in. We get to see his situation there. He tries to like recover a bit, but he also has some like stuff saved up in case he needs to bounce, right? He has been bouncing from place to place in sort of the outer regions of Catan, the more lax regions that aren't being like fully controlled yet. So he has experience. But the very next day, the mysterious stranger that came to him inside the prison goes to the orphanage, wants to talk with him. Now, this person's name, we find out later, is Olsiskor. Olsiskor is a senator of the hierarchy. He's a quintus. He's pretty high up there. And he wants to adopt someone like Viz for reasons we understand later on. He tests Viz, right? So there's like this sort of little exam where he tests Viz on everything he knows about the world. Great bit of world building and also character building. We see that Viz is very educated, and we see his inner monologue as he tries to suss out what exactly is happening here. So Elsiskor makes the offer to adopt Viz. Viz accepts. Then we head to the academy, but along the way we see his journey. We see Viz's journey to do, and the author uses this time to do some more world building, right, and some more character building. And we also see a transvect. The transvect is what you see here at the front of the book, well, depending on what you get. But it's this plane or sort of blimp, but it's made of stone, and it's powered and moved by will. And during the ride, the stakes become clear. Olsiskor tells Viz, "Listen, you're going to investigate my brother's murder. You do this, I give you a life out of your current situation." Viz thinks to himself, and he's like, "Okay, I'm gonna do it because if I do well, I can get this position I really want, so he can leave the hierarchy behind and to never cede will." Okay, but oh no, their ride gets taken down by a freak attack by the revolutionary freedom fighters that are known as the Anguis in this world. Okay, so the Anguis, Viz thinks of them like disorganized groups of people who just cause immense amount of violence towards people who don't deserve it, that just make things worse. But there are these freedom fighters, they take down the transvect. What follows is a series of action scenes. Olsiskor uses his will, right? We see what a Quintus can do. His eyes turn black and he's able to move at these superhuman speeds. He fights off their attackers, but mysteriously, someone shoots an arrow at his leg, and that saps out all the will from his body. And that is like, oh shit, what kind of weapon is this? Viz then has to take things into his own hands. He actually fights the remaining attackers, the remaining Anguis people. So we see him is not the type to back down when he's cornered. And then he talks to this one woman who seems like a leader of the Anguis. This mystery woman who blackmails Viz and tells him, "Hey, listen, we wanted you to get adopted by this guy so he can place you in the academy. And once you're at the academy, you need to work with us." And this mystery woman makes it clear, "Hey, listen, I know who you are, Viz. I know you are Diago. I know you are the Prince of Sus. And if you don't do what we say, we're going to blackmail you." Viz convinces this person, "Hey, listen, dude, I'll help you out 100%, but I won't do things your way. I'm not going to do what you're telling me to do right now. I'm going to find my way back to the academy. I'm not going to come with you right now, okay?" And then this person's like, "Okay, fine, but you need to meet us at this festival months later." So the author is very clever here, sets up intrigue. Who is this woman? More mysteries, and also tells us, "Hey, we're gonna get there, right? We're gonna get there. Look out for this festival that Viz will have to go through and go to and find a way to make contact with this woman. Otherwise, there will be consequences." Viz carries Ulsiskor back to the damaged transvect, but he manages to make it go work again. They fly and they arrive at the academy. Now, it's not as straightforward as that. Viz gets healed, but they're only in the academy for paperwork. Then we get to see him go to Catan, and at Catan, Catan is the think of it like the Rome in the Roman Empire. Catan is described as this like huge bustling city with so many people, but he goes to Catan to go to Elsiskor's place of residence, and there's a training montage so that he can get ready for the actual academy when he joins in later. I'll be honest, right? even though I gave it a 5 out of 5 stars, I had a huge pause in the beginning where I only read this book sporadically because it didn't just hook me. I get that the author wants us to learn about all these things, and maybe it's necessary for a book like this that has a lot going on to lay the groundwork and the foundation before you go on and read about the crazy stuff that happens. But once Viz gets to the academy, I felt like it was a page turner. And before we get to the heavy spoilers, the structure of the story. I think the story is a page turner because after it takes its time to establish these like five different things, the author masterfully juggles those five different things to give each of those things intrigue and attention, while others can take a rest and take a back burner. So your focus is always on something interesting and it never feels stale. So these five things are like investigating Score's brother's death, working with the Anguis who's trying to blackmail Viz advancing in the academy, and then Viz not getting caught. That's also something you need to keep in mind. And then at the heart of it all is this really weird mystery at the inside the academy that is very intriguing. And what the author does, right? For example, the Anguis will ask Viz to do something impossible, but then at the same time, Viz needs to realize, oh, if I want to do that thing, it's going to fuck up my relationship with my friends and the teachers who I need to impress so that I can advance in my class. But then as that's happening, Viz is also like, oh, but because of the timing, I need to also uncover these ruins to find out more about the mystery. And because it just keeps going like that, it goes high, low. Because that keeps happening, we keep reading about something new, something crazy. We keep wanting to see how it goes. Lots of late nights with this book. Okay, heavy spoiler time. First of all, the labyrinth I think is very clever. What is the labyrinth? Essentially, there's like this test in the academy that you have to go through where they make you run this labyrinth with someone helping you and with people chasing you. And they say that this is analogous to using will. Because in this academy, you can't use will to learn, but they say if you're really good at this labyrinth, you're great at using will. Now, we actually find out later on that this labyrinth is a sort of test for this that is central to the mystery at the heart of this academy. Having this one thing that they keep going back to, right? Having this one challenge that Viz, throughout the entirety of the book, needs to work towards, I think is very clever. It serves as like an anchor point to the story. And this is not to mention like the weird shit that Viz keeps finding out. So he sneaks off, periodically he sneaks off to investigate these ruins near the academy. And these ruins are so fucking weird. He goes into this ruins and he finds these people impaled with like obsidian daggers. And these corpses can just start talking. When I read that part of the book, I was like, what the fuck is going on? Like I had to keep reading, right? Like just having something as shocking as that you want answers for, I think is very great. And I really love the academy, how Viz has to climb it, like the hierarchy. The academy has these different classes, these different tiers. If you do well on one tier, you can get promoted to the next. And Viz has a sort of time limit because he comes into the academy late and he needs to go up as fast as possible so he gets more privileges in the school so that he can complete various missions given to him by the Anguis and by Score. And Viz climbing all of these different tiers gives us an excuse to meet everyone, meet the different types of proctors. It also gives us mini tests, mini obstacles that we have to see Viz overcome. At one point in time, he has to duel this other kid who, unbeknownst to Viz, is like one of the best duelists in their class. But because Viz is like the Prince of Sus, he's learned dueling himself, but it's like a different style. But the way they duel is he puts on this armor that is connected to this mannequin. And as he moves, the mannequin moves. So the duel is between these two mannequins to make sure that everyone in the armor is fine. But during the duel, we see Viz best his opponent, even though it's sort of rigged. Viz also starts the academy as an outcast. It's clever to do this because then the author could have us focus on a small number of names to make them memorable, and also to set up moments where, as Viz builds up his reputation as like this sort of badass, there's also that satisfaction. These people who wouldn't talk to him, who shun him, go slowly from that to being scared of him to like revering him. In terms of the characters, right, I'll start with the side characters before I get to Viz. Calidus, Viz's first friend that he makes, and I think his best friend in the academy. I didn't really feel attached to him. He is sort of more like an outlet for us to see that Viz is someone who takes care of his friends and is loyal, because Calidus gets into trouble and Viz helps him get out of it. A very cool scene, by the way, where Viz plays foundation against this girl who's supposedly very smart at Foundation. It's kind of a bullshit moment that Viz could just best her, but okay, whatever. When Calidus dies towards the very end of this book, I felt sad not because I was attached to Calidus. I felt sad because Viz was sad, right? I felt sad because the person we're sympathizing with, Viz, talks about how pained he is. Like, he carries his dead friend's body all throughout the forest, even though he dies halfway through. He keeps talking to him. Aiden, this other guy, he's great though, right? He's sort of mysterious in the sense that we know that there's more to him, but we're just not getting the answers, at least right now. I like how when we first meet Aiden, he's a sort of aggressor that punches Viz. And these guys are it's sort of like an enemies to friends sort of situation, right? So I like that. Now, Viz has this romance with this girl named Emisa. A romance that I didn't really like, just because it's too easy, okay? Maybe this just speaks to me, but I felt like without the struggle, it's just, all right, whatever, right? Emisa just looks like a nice person. She does end up betraying Viz at the very end, and that I did feel bad for that, but I felt heartbreak for Viz because he really trusted Emisa. I couldn't care less that he didn't get with Emisa. Part of me was kind of happy, right? Part of me was kind of happy because there's this other girl, Iqua. Iqua is this person who spent some time with Viz in Act 1. At first, she was kind of dismissive towards Viz, but she sort of becomes like his sort of enemy who tries to uncover Viz because she thinks that Viz is hiding something because Viz was advancing too rapidly in the academy. This could have been a really nice rivals to lovers situation. It didn't happen. She plays a part in book 2. Won't spoil that. Okay, Viridius. Viridius is the principalist of the school. He serves as a sort of antagonist. He is an interesting villain. He's not a villain that like outwardly hates on Viz. He's more of a charming villain who is, it's very clear that he knows a lot of things that Viz doesn't about this mystery that's happening. But he doesn't want to tell Viz. He has its own reasons for being secretive. And because of a villain like Viridius, it always keeps you guessing. When something bad happens, you're always like, did Viridius do this? Or was it just coincidence? One thing about Viridius, though, I think it gets kind of tiresome whenever Viz describes him as charming. Or whenever Viridius does something and Viz is like, is he telling the truth? Is he? Other characters I'm just going to mention briefly. Lanistia, Viz's tutor, very badass. I like her. Score felt kind of bland for me. He just seems like some guy. He's like a one-note guy, right? He's like, I need to find out what happened to my brother. Okay, very interesting. Relukia, though. So who is Relukia? Relukia, you are in the heavy spoiler section. Relukia is the mystery woman that is part of the Anguis that's blackmailing Viz. But halfway throughout the book, we find out that Relukia is Score's distant wife. And it's just a very shocking moment when we realize that that's who she is, right? And then, it adds a lot of extra intrigue to the story, just pulling off that very surprising twist. It's like one of those things that you could just never have thought of. Yet all the clues were there, and I really like that. Right? I really like that. As for Viz, as I said, he's more of a Gary Stu. At the start of the story, he's a broke, impoverished orphan, and because of that, it's easy to sympathize with him. But because of the fact that he's also like part of a royal family once, he can pull shit out of his ass and tell you about like, oh, I'm actually pretty good at dueling. Oh, I'm actually pretty fucking smart, right? And like, I understand these fucking dead languages. So like, you get best of both worlds. The reader sympathizes with someone down on his luck, but the reader is also looking forward to seeing him do cool things that not a lot of people can do. It's one of his many internal conflicts. It is literally just like accepting the fact that he's like hot shit, that he's actually like cool and he's powerful and he can do all these cool things, so that he shouldn't run away. He should use his powers for good. Like that's literally one of the biggest internal conflicts that he needs to go through. There's also this internal conflict of him trying to square away his grief, all the people he's lost when he was once, the Prince of Sus. I also want to talk about how Viz goes back to Sus in Act 3. So in Act 3, he gets invited by the friends at the very top class, the class 3, to vacation away in his island that is now conquered and colonized. And Viz just like feels so sick about that, but he needs to go through it. And there's this moment where he talks with one of his father's former advisors, and he just reminisces about everyone he's lost. That's a very great moment. Before he leaves, he goes back silently into this one restaurant, which has been established as run by people who don't like the hierarchy, right? Who would rebel against the hierarchy if they could. But he goes back to this restaurant, and it becomes clear that everyone knows who he is, that everyone knows that this guy was our prince. But he comes back, he sits down silently, right? And they just make him a meal of kings, full of lobster and whatnot, and he eats it, right? And it's like this tense and hype moment. And then once he leaves, he pays using the currency that is now no longer legal tender, a currency that has his father's face on it. And I think that's great. I think that was a really great moment. To end things off, I think I just want to talk about why this book is called The Will of the Many, right? It's one of the many ideas, social commentary that it's trying to tell you throughout this book. The anguish in this book, the freedom fighters, make this argument that the people in an oppressive society, the people at the very bottom, oftentimes they feed into the system. Oftentimes they want the system to continue. Either it is because of cowardice or because of greed, but the people at the very bottom are as guilty, if not more guilty, than the people at the very top because there's more of them. Because of that, it's okay to commit mass murders. It's okay to do terrorism. Just the balls for this book to say something like that and to have our main character agree with the anguish, by the way. But our main character's retort to that is saying, yeah, you're right, but I'm not just going to go down this path where I just want to kill everyone, right? I actually want to make a change. I want to make a difference. And I feel like that sort of response is golden. There's a lot more I can say about this book, clearly, but I love this book. If you haven't read this book, I don't know why you sat through the spoiler section. If you have read this book, go ahead and reread this book. Okay, read the sequel too. This is a very great book. That's it for The Will of the Many. Okay, final book. It's Fourth Wing by Rebecca Yarros. I had a blast reading this book, okay? You go to this academy to learn how to ride dragons. When you're bonded with a dragon, you can communicate with them telepathically, but you can also gain access to these powers called signets. They're like superpowers. You can eject fire, you can control shadows, you can shoot lightning, you can read minds. But this academy, this war college, it's ruthless. Murder between students is it's legal in this in this academy. And you follow this journey of this frail girl who would want nothing more in the world to just become a scribe and to read and write for a living. But she has mommy issues, and her mom forces her to become a dragon rider. And eventually, she finds out she's good at it. She finds out she's strong. She makes friends. She rides cool dragons. She gains her own powers. She thrusts herself into this love triangle between her dorky childhood friend and this mysterious, muscle-clad, tattooed, tall, dangerous alpha male senior. Okay, and it's a love triangle. Who is she gonna choose? We don't know. And if that sounds interesting, this book is for you. So I picked up this book. Okay, not because I was fucking interested in this book. Okay, just fucking. Okay, understand, right? I'm a writer, so I want to see why this book is so popular. Me and my girlfriend read this book together. We sort of talked about it back and forth. It's very it's very interesting. And if I'm being honest, okay, I think this book is great. Okay, I enjoyed this book. I'm surprised to say, but surprisingly, I do. The romance didn't do it for me, but I did find myself being more intrigued about Xaden than Violet. And the romance is fun to think about and joke about if you don't take these things seriously. And I guess if you're a girl who's into this sort of stuff, you'd fucking enjoy it, right? But at the same time, once you start dissecting the romance and what they try and do with it, you realize just how cleverly constructed it is. What I'll say is that the twist in this book near the end is stupid. The world building is nonsensical. It doesn't have any mind-bending social commentary, right? It doesn't really say anything about our world. But it's a fun time. It sucks you into this fantasy of being this weak person that people don't expect much of, and excelling and thriving in this world and finding new friends and finding new loves, and doing cool shit with dragons. What this book showed me is that you don't need clever world building or well-built characters or an intricate power system. All you really need is to understand what your readers want and to deliver. All you really need is to give them a good time. And I give this book a 4 out of 5 stars. That being said, I did read Iron Flame, and I am reading Onyx Storm right now. I kind of paused on that. There are some snobs out there who would never touch a book like this. If you're not one of those snobs, I feel like you'd have some fun time with Fourth Wing. Okay, spoiler, spoiler, spoiler. Be warned. We'll start by talking about how this book draws you in. This book starts quick. Okay, it starts by telling us who our main character is. Her name is Violet Sorengale. We find out early on that she wants to be a scribe, but her mother is forcing her to undergo this exam. This book starts with an exam. If she passes this exam, she goes into Basquiat War College. So we know what the aim is. We're told that Violet is weak and frail, and she has a sister who's already a dragon rider, that's looking out for her and wants her to survive. Her sister is the one arguing with her mom, so that this also further characterizes the way Violet is. And despite their pleas, Violet still has to go. So the exam that she has to go through, basically to become a good dragon rider, you need to have good balance. And to have good balance, they test that by making you walk this parapet hundreds of feet up in the air. You need to walk through the parapet from one tower to another. And if you survive, you're in. But hundreds of feet up in the air, there's a lot of wind. And sometimes weather conditions can't be so good. Now, to add to like the absurdity of it all, if you fall off, you die. There's no netting. Now, I noticed that this book does a lot of that, right? This book, to tell you just how ruthless this war college is, plays with the fact that you can die doing like really stupid shit that really you shouldn't be able to die in real life. In the sense that the school shouldn't be allowing people to just fucking die if they fail this entrance exam. The school shouldn't really be allowing people to murder each other because, survival of the fittest. There are a lot of these things where it's just like, okay, it's only here and it's only possible because it's a fantasy book because they want to raise the stakes. It's clever, but it's also nonsensical. On her way up the tower to take this exam, we see her talk to these two people, this one guy and this one girl. The girl ends up being her best friend, this person named Rhiannon or whatever. And this other guy, when he takes the test, we see him like die. Okay, so stakes are raised at the very top, right? So let me take it a step back, okay? Let me take it a step back. So we get introduced to the love triangle very quickly. When she's talking to her sister, Mira is telling her, hey, listen, dude, look for Dane. Dane is Violet's childhood best friend, and Dane is a second year. And she's like, Dane will protect you. So once you're inside, look for Dane. Whatever you do, stay away from this guy named Xaden Ryerson, because Xaden Ryerson is this very dangerous guy, because apparently our mother, as a general, once did like war crimes to Xaden's people. Now, why is Xaden allowed to go into this prestigious war college, even though his family started an uprising? But okay, whatever. We need him inside the war college, right? Okay, so we're established, right? Xaden's dangerous. Look for Dane. She goes up into she right before she starts her exam. She sees the most beautiful, exquisite man ever. It's like half a page of describing how Xaden looks like, and then they talk, and you're like, oh, this is Xaden. Oh fuck, and they're like, oh no, right? Now, Violet starts walking the parapet, and because she gets so nervous, she starts reciting facts about the world. Characterizes the fact that she's a scribe. She really likes all these factoids about the world. I admire how shameless it is that the author pulled something off like this. Making our main character someone who cares about the world will really help you world build. But also it's dumb. But at the same time, it works. It's part of the charm of this book, right? Then, as Violet is walking through this parapet, we get introduced to the actual antagonist of this book, and maybe even like the series. We get introduced to Jack. Jack is this literal asshole. He starts pushing people off the parapet just because it's like survival of the fittest. And then he gets to Violet, but Violet has to fend him off. But they both make it across the parapet. Now they're safe. I really like how quickly he's introduced. Now, once they make it across, introduced to Dane, Violet's childhood best friend, but we see that Dane is also very overprotective of Violet to the point where it seems like Dane doesn't believe in Violet. We know all the characters. We don't like this guy. Don't like Jack. Xaden's mysterious, but he's also hot. We need to look for someone named Dane. Mira is there, but she can't help around. She's our big sister. Violet is here. She doesn't want to become a dragon rider, but she has to become one. And we also have Rhiannon, who is Violet's best friend. All of that within the first 50 pages, established, done, very efficient. There's like this sort of little presentation that they show where we see dragons, but we also see that the dragons are dangerous. These two cadets, because they're so scared of the dragons, they start running away. And when they start running away, they get like blasted and incinerated, which is fucking, which is kind of hilarious, right? If you think about it. But for Violet, that's like, oh shit, we're getting serious now. As Violet is looking at these dragons, she thinks to herself and she talks about how these dragons, once they bond with you, you can telepathically link to them. How bonding with a dragon is this huge deal. How you get signet powers when you bond with the dragon. And these signet powers, man, let me tell you, right? There's a lot of potential here. It's funny because like we get to learn really quickly that Dane's power is like the lamest shit ever. If he touches someone, he can read their minds. But like Loki and okay, I don't want to spoil too much. Xaden has cool ass powers where he can like control the shadows, but the shadows are also like material beings that can like hold things in place. So like Xaden gets like an overpowered fucking power, and Dane gets like a lame ass power, right? We also see around this time when Violet and Dane are talking, Zayden just comes up and like alpha dogs alpha dogs fucking Dane, right? And he just gets sunned real fucking bad. And you know, we also find out that Zayden's a wing leader. In this war college, the cadets are split into these four wings. Zayden is the leader of the fourth wing. This book gets a lot of mileage from the fact that people already have a clear image in their head of what a dragon is. When the writer is describing these dragons, she doesn't have to talk about, oh, they're scaly, oh, this is what their anatomy looks like. She can just say, oh, there are these orange ones, they have these horns, they have these tails. The same goes for describing the architecture at this place. We get a sense it's sort of like a castle. There are kingdoms and whatnot. Very, very nice. And the author also plays on familiar tropes as well. Dane is a childhood friend, so we obviously want them to get together. But because we know this is like an enemies to lovers book, we're also like, ooh, okay, Zayden's kind of dangerous. Okay, we got to look out for this guy, right? You know that the reader's expecting certain things, so you make it seem very improbable for those things to happen. So that once things do start happening, the readers can like follow along for that journey. After all this setup, what follows is Violet trying to survive War College, and also her getting her dragon, and all the crazy shit that ensues after that. Heavy spoiler time. Heavy spoilers time. When Violet gets her dragon, chef's kiss. Okay, they did a good job at building up to that moment, and just like the absurdity and the craziness. What happens is after like a long, perilous journey during threshing, that's what they call bonding and getting the dragon to bond with you. Violet gets not one, but she gets two dragons. She gets this one cute, fluffy ass dragon by the name of Andarna, and the second dragon who's like big and strong, this guy named Terran. And and they're dynamic, man. Top notch. It's really great. Other than that, right, there's also this added depth and mystique towards the dragons because it's clear that the dragons play by rules that they don't bother telling the humans. Speaking of dragons, we need to talk about Zayden and Violet's romance plot. One of the reasons they start off as enemies. Enemies in the sense that they have every reason to hate each other. But the thing is, because of forced proximity, and because of the fact that once Violet gets her dragon, apparently her dragon is bonded with Zayden's dragon. So now they have an expressed interest to keeping each other alive and to bonding. And because of that, their relationship can flourish. This is marketed as an enemies to lovers, but I feel like this book is smart in having the best of both worlds with Zayden. Because Zayden doesn't actually do anything that suggests he wants to really kill Violet. In the beginning of this book, it's mostly just Violet being scared of Zayden. But he low-key like stays off of her. He doesn't really do anything to her. And we find out later, if you read extra POV chapters, that Zayden is actually really into Violet, even before the dragons. Best of both worlds in the sense that we get the intrigue of seeing these two people who should hate each other getting together, but at the same time, you're also able to swoon over the fact that Zayden really likes Violet. Inklings of the messiness without the actual messiness. Zayden is actually a very interesting character. I low-key want a story from his perspective because Zayden himself, he is apparently nobility of this race of people that try to commit an uprising against the current government for reasons that seem justifiable. The reason being the government was keeping a secret, which I'll talk about soon. He's this guy who disappears all the time. We get the sense that he's doing a lot of political intrigue. He's doing a lot of maneuvering. He's doing a lot of making sure his troops stay in line. And he's also like this outcast just because of the fact that he has like marked tattoos, that he is sent to Basquiat War College because he's sent there to die. And they didn't really expect him to do as well as he did. But he does. Dane, on the other hand, is just like a complete and utter dork. It gets annoying just how much he talks about. But Violet, I gotta protect you, right? I gotta protect you. You're too weak. I gotta protect you. When the dragons mate in this book, okay, and I'm gonna try and talk about this with a straight face. When the dragons mate in this book, they send their signals and sensations into their bonded mates. When Violet and Zayden's dragons are mating, Violet and Zayden feel it and they get really horny, and this leads to their first kiss. When the spicy scenes do happen, because they have powers at this point, because they have signet powers, when they orgasm, the powers go kind of haywire. And as a guy reading the smut scenes, obviously they don't do it for me, but it's very easy to skip, and they don't really add a lot, in my opinion. Other than that, I like signets. Signets are cool. They're a cool power system. I wish they were more tied with people's personalities. And when it comes to side characters and the friends that Violet makes, I found Zayden's friends cooler. they have this aura of danger and mystique to them. And in terms of how she does in this academy, I like that because she's weaker than the rest, she has to outthink the others. The clever bits that she has to do. When she has to spar with Jack Barlow, she resorts to poisoning. Whenever there's a tense moment in this book, right? Things get tense, hype action scene. When the author slows it down so people can get a breather, she slows it down with fun. She slows it down by showing us, for example, Violet and her friends committing a heist to get her mother's map from her office. She also sneaks in a clever bit of world building. She sneaks in people's signet powers. I just love how this book is structured. It shows me how you can write something to have a good time. It's great. It's great. It's great. It's great. Get this book if any of that sounds interesting. That is it for my review of Fourth Wing. Okay, if you made it to the end, I want to say thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. Check out my novel, check out my app, and yeah, I'll see you guys next time. Peace. Okay.